we run that competitive process. We're incentivized there to get the best offer that's available. And just because of what's happening in the marketplace just now, the chances are that will be achieved. It's far better to sit in that situation, that environment, as opposed to thinking, I need out in 12 months' time and I'm running out of options here. I'll take anything. Try and avoid that scenario.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Hive 5. I'm Ross Martin from Hive Business, and I'm delighted to welcome Paul Graham from Christie Co. Hello there.
Hi, Ross. Good morning. Thanks for having me back on again. Pleasure. My pleasure.
Are you good? Are you in sunny Scotland, are you?
Sunny Scotland. We've been blessed with the weather recently, so it's not too bad at all.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us today. We know each other quite well. We do a lot of joint projects together, but for people out there who may not be aware, could you tell them a little bit about yourself and who you work for and what you do?
Yeah, certainly can. It's Paul Graham, Head of Dental at Christie Co. Christie Co, the largest specialist firm of business agents in the UK, valuing and selling dental practices. We've got 13 offices throughout the UK with a dental specialist in each region. That helps give us a national reach, but with the importance of having local knowledge. Christie Co, the only RICS regulated dental agent in the whole of the UK. RICS, of course, being the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. So a bit like how a dentist is governed, we are too. We act for owners looking to sell their practice. This can range from single assets to larger portfolios. And importantly, we always work for the seller.
Absolutely. Okay, so presumably we had quite a lot of activity recently. Is that the case?
It very much is so, yes. I mean, I know we kind of look at a mere 18 months ago and how the landscape was then to where we are now. And thankfully, the market is purring with activity just now. A lot of things have really helped underpin that confidence in where the market is today.
So clearly there's a lot of kind of transition between buyers wanting to buy and sellers wanting to sell. What is the biggest catalyst that you see for dentists thinking or choosing to decide that now's the right time to sell their practice?
Yeah, good question, actually. There's probably a few things there. So if I was just picking one, probably quite sad to say, actually. I have a lot of friends who are dentists, and the one thing that is often referenced, they are looking to sell because they are simply fed up with the protocols and politics of running a practice. I think that age demographic, they've seen dentistry change quite significantly over the years. And particularly within the last 18 months, it's not been without its challenges. So I think there's many operators there who are a bit jaded by that, and who recognise that now is probably a time out. There are definitely another couple of components within there. It's natural impending retirement. And I think more so recently is the awareness of favourable market conditions. So there's many who may not have been expecting to sell so soon, but recognising what's happening in the marketplace and pressing that big red button a bit quicker.
Well, I suppose every person is individually thinking, they've almost got like an axis of, right, how much longer do I want to do this, and watching as the prices, I'm assuming you track these averages, they're tracking steadily upwards, and I imagine those two kind of variables cross at some point in time, and the condensation from the results from the pandemic may have caused those lines to cross in a significant number of instances.
Yeah, very much so. I think that's encouraging to see, really. Equally, though, it's met by the buyer demand. Demand was there pre-COVID. The spike that we've seen since has been phenomenal. So I think there's a number of reasons for that. It can be associates looking to secure their destiny within dentistry and buying their own practice. It can be canny investors who are recognising the strength of the market. the operating procedures that are within practices just now, allowing practices to remain open despite the additional lockdowns that we've seen, and that's very important. That gives confidence to banks as well. So any independents who are borrowing money, banks are looking at the sector as a needs-based green light sector. So yeah, all favourable points really. Equally, we're seeing, we spoke about that kind of age demographic of those who are early 50s, mid 50s, reaching retirement. The profile of buyer that we're seeing just now, there's many who are acquiring a practice, but perhaps not looking at what the predecessors have done and own the practice for 20, 30 years. We're starting to see a little bit of a churn now, where after 5, 6 years, those young operators who have bought, they've improved the practice. They're looking to sell the practice and move on to something else. So yeah, I mean, I think the market's becoming more and more commercial.
We've our organisation has actually dealt with quite a larger number than historically of kind of multi-million-pound site deals. I just wondered, is there any differentiator between perhaps the traditional single site and perhaps the micro group, that might have 3 to 5 sites? Is there any kind of changing activity in that micro site arena?
Yeah, I think when you look at the single asset site versus smaller portfolios, you have a smaller portfolio there that will spike the interest of the semi-corporate, corporate, private equity type buyer coming in. Or equally those who have a portfolio of practice, independent owners with a portfolio of practices already, and looking at in one fell swoop the opportunity to bolt on another 5 practices, for example, would be very appealing. Those opportunities
potentially pretty buoyant for single sites or micro sites, or ones that are 5 to 10 or upwards, presumably.
Right across the board, absolutely. There's opportunities there, and I think those single asset sites that we were talking about, investors are buying those opportunities with the vision of, I'll not stop there as well. I have to start somewhere. Yes, it's nice if in one fell swoop you can get those 5 or 6 sites in a small group, but equally there's many who look at organic growth with acquiring site number 1, and then in 6 months move on to site number 2.
Well, I've always said that that what dentists do is amazing, can be life-changing to people, whether it's recreating their smile, giving them confidence, allowing to do all the things that they want to do in life. So that manifests itself in a pretty buoyant recovery. Our metrics tell us that. So it's pretty attractive to people wanting to come into it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, a number of reasons for that. And it's encouraging to see the demand that we've experienced over the last year to date, particularly the stats that we're seeing evolve and the trends emerge. The sites that we're bringing to the market for sale, we are having 8 viewings per practice on average. Deals are being agreed typically 20% quicker than previously. And the numbers behind that, again, year to date, we've received 244 offers on practices we have for sale with an aggregate value of over £400 million. I mean, if that's not enough evidence of how strong the market is, I don't know what is.
Well, you're pretty effective, so you make it sound easy, Paul. What's the biggest challenge you do face, though, in a sale process?
Okay. Yeah, I think that probably the one thing that stands out just now. Well, there's probably 2 things. I would say the one that springs to mind just now is actually meeting buyer demand. So the components in the market were always demand outweighed supply. That's great conditions for a seller. Those dynamics are perfect. What we've seen in the last 12 months is just that spike of demand increase again. And I think it's the one thing that we want to be able to shout about to operators who are thinking about selling or have been nervous about selling, wondering how is the market performing. I think the opportunity out there to achieve a fantastic result for pretty much any practice that is available, there's going to be good interest for it. Secondly, I think one of the other challenges that we've got is, whilst those dynamics are very favourable for a seller, it is important to be realistic at the same time. We'd all love to think that the dental practice is worth millions of pounds. And look, you could have buyers coming knocking saying, yeah, I'll pay you that and I'm interested. But there's a number of steps within that process that you have to be very careful, cautious and realistic about. And achieving a realistic asking price, going to the market with a realistic asking price is vital. Far too often do we see opportunities that are being circulated and pricing expectations are just off the scale. And I generally think that a seller gets one crack of the whip of this process. And so making sure it's done right is absolutely, it's vital.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, it's obviously possibly the only time they'll sell a practice. So I understand how the biggest number possible is possibly the most attractive number to take it to market. But equally, you don't want to shrink the pool of potential buyers, because that competitive tension is ultimately going to probably pay more dividends than a false benchmark. Would you say?
Absolutely spot on, Ross. I think the opportunity there to invite the interest, to get that melting pot of buyers interested. They are emotionally and financially committed at that point. There'll be a real range, a broad range of the type of buyer in typically within any practice sale, from independents to corporates or PE investors. And by running that competitive process, the beauty is that the market's going to tell what it's worth in the end anyway.
I mean, we've got a wealth of information on sellers who are looking to sell as well. I think it is probably also very important for everyone to remember that price is one very important thing, but there are also other important terms that can occur, like the tie-in period of time. You don't want a practice sat on the market gathering dust for a lengthy period of time if you felt it's the right time. So I think the price is the thing you can benchmark very easily, but to create a smooth, efficient process as well, we do try and tell everyone there are other components to a deal which are very important in there. Well, if it's trying to find the right buyer, because the buyers are different, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. Those post-sale conditions, there can be a difference of £100,000 on the headline offer between buyers, and a seller may look at the terms of the lower offer and think, well, that's the one that's far more favourable, and I like that buyer, and I'm going to go with that one. Thanks very much.
We've definitely seen a propensity to have a nice high headline offer, but the conditions and hurdles you've got to jump over to get them, it's all, it's borderline kind of mis-selling to a certain extent, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the easy tact of grabbing someone's attention with headline offer. What you don't know you're getting is what the post-sale conditions are like, and the post-sale conditions just now are typically changing. So 2-3 years ago, where we would just talk about a vanilla trade deal, a corporate coming in, deferring a certain amount of the offer, let's call it 30% over 3 years. There's a income target to achieve after year one. If it's achieved, 10% is paid. Year two, the remaining 10%. Year three, the final 10%. And any of that turnover target, any pound shortfall on target, there's a pound clawed back of the deferred amount. Now we question on certain deals, does there need to be a deferred amount at all? Not necessarily the case. Equally, that deferred amount, what is that money doing? over that period of time? Is there an opportunity to have compounded interest on the deferred amount, or is there incentives there if I grow the business further for me to realise some upside as the business performs better? And it's easy to then see those questions be met with suggestions. Yes, there's an upside. If you grow turnover target to X amount, we'll pay this amount more. But again, that's the moment where you have to look at and wonder how realistic it is. It's very important.
Well, I suppose as the numbers get bigger, as a seller, you've got to be so much more alert to all the kind of nuances when you're selling, because it can make large £500,000 difference sometimes.
Definitely. Definitely. In running that process, that term we've mentioned already, competitive process and tension, is going to allow a seller to be able to sit with a plethora of offers there and compare and contrast, and we can start to hone in on those and tweak certain elements of it in order to get the best possible offer from the marketplace. That seller then has the comfort of the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone in to build that business, so that they are absolutely getting the best offer from the marketplace.
What's the number one piece of advice then you think you could give with your wealthy experience to a dentist who's thinking or wants to sell their practice?
Yes, I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to say two things again. Actually. Yeah. Similar to what we've touched on, it is absolutely vital to run a competitive process. The opportunity to it's unthinkable just giving one operator one potential buyer the free run at the practice to buy. There are more buyers in the marketplace than ever before, so that's the one piece of advice I'd say. Secondly,
far outside probably the known pool as well. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I think historically there was always the moment of having a kind of few of those trade buyers, 1, 2, and 3 on speed dial. You could kind of think, well, they'll be interested, and if they're not, it's going to be the other one. If we now look at the base of those types of buyers, we're comfortably at a dozen. And look, that's when you start to look at practices of a certain size and scale that you typically think, who can afford to buy this type of practice? When you have something at a kind of real sweet spot pricing, probably up to say £2 million, that the endless amounts of buyers for that type of opportunity. High net worth individuals, the independent operators acquiring first sight, but with a good bank support and probably a bit of help from bank and mum and dad there as well. Or equally those empire builders who are on to site 4, 5, 6, and of which there are dozens of. So yeah, a really good pool of buyers for that mass market opportunity. And again, when you scale up, there's more than just the speed dial 3 buyers now, which is good to see. The bit I'm going to cheat about here is the second piece of advice, and it's time. Just to any seller out there who might not even be a seller right now, is just afford yourself time to the process. If someone said to me, I'm 5 years away from thinking about selling, that is music to my ears, because you may have a practice there that typically a buyer would start to suggest, we need a 3-year tie-in from the seller. You get to that kind of 5-year point, and you kind of want to start exploring value as well. And we run we run the analysis of the numbers and get to a point of reporting the figures back and where the practice is valued at. And we have an operator there who says, okay, well, I'm not quite ready to pull that trigger just now. What can I do to increase value by, say, another £1 million? At least you have that window of time to start making changes and improvements to the business to get to that point. The relationship building as well is so important. So over that period of time, we can track that business every 6 months. There's absolutely no harm in doing that at all, just to see where two things. It dovetails with market performance, and also how the practice is generally performing from a profit perspective as well. And being able to graph that and track it, that's yeah. Well,
I guess choice kind of gives you a better price in a way. If you've got to the point where you have to sell this year because you've just had enough, I think ultimately you'll probably end up with worse terms and conditions and possibly a worse price, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and look, it happens. I think those rushed processes. Not everyone has kind of mapped it out and planned it out, and they find themselves in a situation or scenario that they have to sell. But we can deal with that, absolutely. But yeah, I think whilst you have the luxury of time to consider these points, bearing in mind it's probably one of the biggest business decisions you'll probably ever make in your lifetime. Just give it a bit of time.
Well, I suppose that as you're mentioning, there's a significant pool of buyers because they want to get into dentistry. We all kind of know that. Being able to say to a buyer, well, do you know what? I don't have to do this if I don't want to. It's surely just going to kind of notch the deal slightly better terms, isn't it?
It does. It does. I think you recognise that by the fact that the demand is definitely there. If it's recognised from a seller's perspective, well, I'm only going to do this if it's absolutely perfect, and we get that. That's the type of client that we like to work for, because there's that opportunity of choice there. We run that competitive process. We're incentivized there to get the best offer that's available. And just because of what's happening in the marketplace just now, the chances are that will be achieved. It's far better to sit in that situation, that environment, as opposed to thinking, I need out in 12 months' time and I'm running out of options here. I'll take anything. Try and avoid that scenario.
Mentioned earlier, we do a lot of work together. We do a lot of work together with you and the whole team. Can you kind of explain just a little bit more how and why we even work together, I suppose, for the client's best interest?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose it's probably in relation to a summary of all those points that we've just discussed there. I think being able to work with yourselves who are acting for what we see definitely is some of the best independent operators of some of the most high profile practices throughout the UK. So kudos to Hive in that regard. And I think being able to then work together to be able to help that practice owner, whether it be an imminent sale or a 5-year plan, it allows us to have that introduction from you to meet with the owner. I suppose set expectations where there's not an agent at this side where we're suggesting sell. That's just narrow-minded. There's the opportunity to say, okay, this Mr. Operator or Mrs. Operator is the business as it is today, and this is the conditions of the marketplace. And you start to kind of cross those two paths and see where the end result is. And sometimes that answer to that process can be a big tick and everyone's happy, and it's a moment where they say, okay, look, that sits well with me, I'm ready to run the process now. Equally, it can be one of those moments where the business is still improving, it's on this upward scale, it's tracking at a very good rate. There's an operator there who isn't yet at retirement or thinking about selling, and look, that is absolutely fine. That gives us the opportunity to kind of showcase what's happening in the marketplace, to be able to highlight to those operators similar sales that are being achieved in and around the region, but equally throughout the UK, and give confidence to that type of operator. Look, at the end of all of that, if he or she is in a position to then say, look, I'm ready to sell and I'd like to continue using the services of Hive and Christie Co to sell, fantastic. If not, then that's okay as well. We are just pretty pleased to be able to highlight what's happening in the marketplace. And like, as a sales agent is kind of number one of what we do, we also do a lot of advisory work, and I think we work very well together in that regard.
I definitely get that kind of theme and tone, which is why we do spend more and more time together. You know, although your definition might be a sale agent, it's the business advice that kind of happens that is almost your purpose from my experience. As you say, downstream it might end up with the sale of the practice, but you know, regularly we're having discussions with clients about planning 3, 4, 5 years out, whether it may be those kind of timescales.
Yeah, definitely. Good.
Great. Well, we actually Paul and Hive have got a dedicated service that we've built for people who are looking to sell and plan possible growth in the medium term. So if you are interested in our wealth planning discovery, then get in contact. You'll probably end up meeting Paul and myself. So as long as you're okay with that, we'd love to hear from you. And thank you very much today, Paul, for all of your insights on the market at the moment.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you very much. Cheers.